Greetings and welcome to episode 8 of the Transform podcast. It is Tuesday, November 9th, 2021, and I'm your host, Christopher Anastasio. And again, welcome to the Transform podcast, guys. We dropped a couple episodes last week. Actually, episode 7 dropped on Thursday, November 4th, and of course that was also the holiday Diwali, and especially to our Transform team members who celebrate Diwali, just kind of wishing everybody a post-happy Diwali now that the date has passed, obviously, but just wanted to go ahead and acknowledge that for everybody on the team and everybody who listens who celebrates the holiday. So, very important point that I wanted to start with there. The episode today is going to focus on a term that you may or may not be familiar with. I mean, as a small business owner, if you're kind of steeped in digital, social media type things, you probably have heard of it, or you may have run across it at some point. If you're not so tuned into that sort of thing, this may be a new term for you, but the term is trendjacking, and you'll see that listed as one word. Okay, so trendjacking, all one word. And basically, the definition of trendjacking, and just kind of, surfing around for the best definition that I can find, I'll go ahead and read one to you here from Merriam.com. Basically says, like the name implies, trendjacking is the act of a third party applying brand content to a trending topic. The trending topic can be anything. Usually it's a hashtag, event, meme, or new slang term. It can be difficult to decide the right moment to chime in on a trend. Too early and not enough people will understand it, but too late and you'll be grouped in with the overdone category, unquote. So that's just Merriam.com's definition. I found a couple other good ones. For example, on marketinginteractive.com, they kind of contrast it to newsjacking, which is a company's content responding to a current piece of news to capture views or gain relevance. And then trendjacking is somewhat similar. A company responds or interacts with a pop culture phenomenon occurring on the internet. By trendjacking, a company is able to hijack or jack the popularity of a particular trend. When done right, it results in a spike in the number of views and impressions and better brand affinity, unquote. So, piecing those definitions together, guys, I think that kind of covers it and gets you up to speed on what trendjacking is, and starts to give you an idea or a sense of how it could be beneficial to you. So, speaking a little bit more about those benefits, when you're posting content to social media, when you are working within the digital channels of your business, you are constantly fighting for attention. You're going to constantly be fighting for, eyeballs, ears, whatever you want to, however your audience consumes your content, you're fighting for that. You're trying to gain every inch that you can. And using tactics like trendjacking, you can accelerate or, be opportunistic about getting in front of more people than you might get in front of on a typical day, for example. Okay, so it can be a very whether it fits in your strategy or not, just talking tactics for a moment, it can be a very strong tactic for accelerating views, accelerating the attention that you're bringing to your brand and to your company, and so on and so forth. Okay, so being able to gain or grab those spikes in visits to your website or visits to your social media platforms and so forth. I mean, it's an obvious benefit that you can accrue to your business. Now, on a secondary level, when you're trendjacking, you're also kind of displaying your, for lack of a better word, and here in the States, I'll use a slang term, that you're sort of hip to the cultural moment that's occurring. And so whether that's part of your business image that you're trying to portray or not, it can be very beneficial. Unless it's completely irrelevant to what you're doing business-wise, and you can't find a way to connect the two, it's not likely to be a negative. It's sort of, I see it as a neutral or a positive. It's either going to work and it's a positive, obviously it's going to bring attention to your business, or it's just not going to work, it's going to fall flat, and there's really no harm done. Now, there's exceptions to that. There's obviously inappropriate types of content that you don't want to piggyback off of, so certainly you wouldn't be doing that in the first place. It's possible that you could be so off base or so irrelevant to the trend that it creates a little bit of a backlash, but really this is a lot of upside and maybe a little bit of downside. So if you guys are kind of slogging away organically from a digital and social media content perspective, trendjacking and newsjacking for that matter, I mean, that was part of the definition I read a moment ago, where you're just jumping into news cycles that are breaking, real time. Doing those things is a way to, propel your business forward from an attention perspective, from an eyeballs on, on website or social media type of perspective. Okay, so a good historical example of trendjacking, which I can picture in my own mind as I cite it to you guys, was, I don't know, especially for the listeners here in the States, the Super Bowl in February 2013, I believe it was February. It might have been January, but I think it was February. During the Super Bowl in February 2013, which I believe was held at the stadium in San Francisco, there was a blackout. Like literally, like in the middle of the game, I forget exactly what part of the game it was, all of a sudden, all the lights went out. Okay, and I mean, they couldn't play anymore. I mean, the game was completely shut down for a while. I mean, if you were watching on television, you could barely see anything, if I recall correctly. So you couldn't even really make out what was going on. I mean, it was a total, obviously the game was played towards the evening, if I remember correctly, and at that point, the game had progressed to a stage where it was getting darker out, and now there were no lights in the stadium. And so during that blackout, Oreo Cookie, that company, the Oreo company, but on their Oreo Cookie platform, okay, their account, they sent out, and it's just kind of funny looking back on it. It was 3 February 2013. So on Twitter, the Oreo Cookie account sent out a graphic that showed in the lower left corner an Oreo cookie, and then around the Oreo cookie there was a little bit of light, and then further out there was darkness, right? So it was sort of like a concentric degree of growing darkness at the further away you got from the cookie. And then at the bottom of the graphic, it said you can still dunk in the dark. Okay, and there was like a little logo or a little icon next to that. And then the caption in the tweet was, quote, "Power out, ? No problem, period," unquote. So basically, Oreo Cookie jumped on this trend, this cultural moment where the Super Bowl was being interrupted, and I mean, it was a huge deal. I mean, obviously in America, we have millions and millions of people watching the Super Bowl. I think it's estimated that, more than half the population watches the game or some crazy number like that. And so basically, Oreo was like, okay, well, we got a power outage, we got a blackout. Let's jump on this and let's go ahead and take advantage of it. So they tweeted out that power out, no problem tweet, which you can find, guys, if you go to, and I'll try to include this in the show notes or somewhere where you can find it, the Marion.com article that cited that. So it's kind of funny. I mean, definitely, it definitely was one of the better ones, and that's why I think they cited it here as an example. And yeah, they sent it out at 7:48 p.m. So it definitely was later on in the evening. Definitely was deeper into the football game that was going on at that time. Okay, guys. So we've talked about the definition of trendjacking. We've talked about some of the benefits, both so the primary benefit of gaining more attention, the secondary benefit of showing that you're hip to cultural moments and trends. I gave you an example there, the Super Bowl. And so as we said before, it's a balancing act, right? You want to make sure that when you're doing this, you can make some kind of connection. So Oreo was able to make the connection that, hey, you can still keep eating our cookies while you're experiencing this blacked out Super Bowl. Obviously if you're at home, you're not blacked out, but therefore you can keep eating, you can keep snacking and keep eating your desserts and so forth while you wait for the game to come on. So they found a way to connect it. And so that's what you want to try to do with your business, is find a way to make the connection and keep it relevant and that sort of thing. And just balance those two things, okay? without going too far, to one end of the spectrum where you're trying to relate two things that have absolutely nothing to do with each other. So, an example going forward, and I kind of was thinking about this a little bit before recording this episode, would be, for example, so right now, here in the U.S. we have a lot of news going on about certain bills being passed, and we have a big tax bill going through, and one of the aspects of that tax bill is the fact that there's a provision or an aspect of it that targets billionaires, and it's really looking to just, laser focus the tax changes on those, 600 or 700 people, whatever number of people are affected by it who are in that status, and basically saying, hey, this tax bill is going to target this very small group of individuals, and it's going to target them because they've been able to avoid tax by borrowing money against their assets rather than selling their assets. So it's a big deal going on right now here in the U.S. And if you're, and I'm speaking to the finance firms out there, for example, CPAs, accountants. If you see that news going on, your clients obviously maybe, I don't want to say maybe, they probably don't fit in the billionaire category, right? As a small business CPA or financial advisory firm, for example, you're probably not, dealing with a lot of billionaires yet, but what you might be able to do there, just as an example of the trendjacking that we're talking about today, is you would be able to say, something that relates the plight of the billionaire, who gets to borrow money instead of selling assets, but now they're being targeted by this tax bill, and bring it back over to your clients. And so you could hop on those trending topics. Obviously, the tax bill is a trending topic here. I don't know the exact hashtags, but, the whole billionaire tax, I think, is a hashtag. The sort of catchy phrase, buy, borrow, die, buy assets, borrow against them, die, and hand them off tax-free to your heirs. So that whole progression of actions that billionaires are allowed to take advantage of, that's a trending topic, or it has been at some point or another. So what you would do is you would see that those topics were trending, and in some ways it's a news cycle, but in other ways it's a cultural moment, because it's not just one piece of news or another. It's this whole debate going on about whether these individuals should be targeted for taxation, or they shouldn't be targeted, or they should pay a certain amount of money, or they shouldn't pay a certain amount. So that's been kind of roiling around for a little while, and if you insert yourself into that discussion, particularly when it first started, when it was sort of at its peak level of attention, I think it's kind of waned a little bit since then, in my opinion, although it may spike again if the bill passes and becomes law, so that's something to look out for. But this would be an example where you could say something catchy like, can't buy, borrow, die, see CPA so-and-so for the next best kind of tax planning. Okay, or something like that. I mean, that's a very poorly worded example. Obviously, I hope nobody uses that one. But that would be a way to kind of turn the phrase that had become popular here. It was popping up in a bunch of different articles I was reading. I saw it, I think it was even part of a title of a Wall Street Journal article at one point. Major publication used it. Okay, so just the phraseology, buy, borrow, die, which most people in the U.S., I'm kind of limiting my scope of experience there, but they can't do that. They're not in a financial position to do that. So you could kind of jump into that trend and, say something along those lines, like, hey, you can't use this tax strategy? Well, come see me for some other great tax strategies, or something to that effect. Okay, so that would be an example of how you could spin that, and you could bring it back home to what your business does and how your business may be connected to that situation, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I don't want to go much longer, guys. I want to kind of wind it down here. Obviously, this isn't a complicated subject, but it's something that takes a little bit of, it takes a little bit of skill. I mean, you have to be paying attention. Okay, so you have to have sort of one eye on the ball, so to speak, and spot these things when they happen. And then you have to have some level of creativity to say, okay, let me connect that back to what I'm doing this way or that way or whatnot. And then you have to time it right. I mean, you like I was saying before, you don't want to be too early, you don't want to be too late. Both of them have drawbacks. So anyway, so taking that all into account, like I said, it's not a complex tactic. but it's maybe not the simplest thing to do if you don't have your ear to the ground on this sort of thing. Okay, now if you have somebody doing your marketing for you, you can tell them, hey, I want to take advantage of this sort of tactic. I want to try to grab these sort of attention spikes when things like this occur, and I expect you to sort of do that for me. Okay, so that's something that if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, hey, Chris, I don't know how to do this, or I'm not going to be able to do this, but you do have somebody working your marketing, or you have somebody in mind to do it, you can tell them, hey, I want you to look for news cycles, trending topics, trending cultural moments, and I want to find ways to brand myself as part of those moments. Okay? So hopefully this podcast gives you enough information to think about how that might occur, or how you might phrase that and approach, a marketer who's doing this on your behalf. Okay? So as usual, guys, we're going to wrap it up here. But as usual, please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Give us a call. Preferably contact us via social media, online, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can reach us. You can drop a comment on either of those platforms. You can go through the website and give us a call. You can reach out to us there as well. But we definitely would love to find ways to help you guys with this. If you need that help and you're looking for somebody to kind of do it on your behalf, we would be glad to do that. So to wrap it up, first of all, we thank you guys for listening to the podcast, subscribing, liking it, sharing it, the whole 9 yards. Definitely super appreciate that. And like I said, drop us a note, drop us a comment, reach out to us anytime, and and let us know what you're thinking. Or let us know if you have a question about this, okay? So we're going to wrap it up here, guys. Thank you so much for listening to Episode 8. We'll be back again later this week with Episode 9, dropping on Thursday. But in the meantime, thanks again for listening, guys. I'm Chris Anastasio. This is the Transform Podcast. Thanks again, guys. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.